KeAndre Lambert-Smith becomes one of the most highly coveted wide receivers in the transfer portal right now. Zach Seyko, Locked On Penn State, joining me here. Lambert-Smith has heard from a bunch of big-time names. Programs like Georgia or Auburn, Colorado has reached out. Texas A&M, West Virginia, all reportedly have contacted or attempted to contact him. How good is KeAndre Lambert-Smith? Why is he getting that level of attention?
I mean, he's getting that level of attention because he is a fifth-year veteran in college football. He was going to be a starter at Penn State, but something just happened. There is some sort of rift that's going on between him and Penn State, whether that's the team, the coaching staff, something changed because it was all, sunshine and rainbows towards the end of his junior season where he showed out against Michigan State, the Rose Bowl, and then had a good game against West Virginia. But then when it mattered most, did not show up against Ohio State. And nobody did, but that was supposed to be your leading wideout, right? And then completely absent against Michigan. Mike Yurcich gets fired and then is completely phased out of the offense. You don't see him at all for almost the remainder of the season. And that goes for the bowl game as well against Ole Miss. So what happened from somebody that put up 100+ yards against West Virginia, 2 touchdowns, and then is nowhere to be found against Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl? Like, this is truly, and then you bring in Julian Fleming. Trey Wallace is progressively getting better, other receivers on Penn State's team. And now the conversation goes, KLS is the number 1 wide receiver on Penn State's team in 2023, but then gets knocked down the depth chart to number 3, becoming the 3rd option in the wide receiver room. I mean, that is, you have to make sense of that somehow. So yes, I mean, he's a capable wide receiver. I think he's talented, but I think people are overrating him here. That's just my honest opinion.
So if he's someone who, would have been a starter at Penn State, certainly he's capable of being a starter elsewhere. But when you think about what sort of receiver he can be, how can he fit into any offense? Is he adaptable to any system? Does he need to have a really good quarterback? Can he play on the outside, inside? What sort of player is available here?
So he can play any of your 3 traditional wide receiver spots, X, Y, and Z. So either of the boundaries in the slot. That's where he was projecting, at least on my depth chart and a lot of other people's, that he would make that transition to the slot receiver spot. But I wouldn't even call it a transition because KeAndre Lambert-Smith could play any of the 3 traditional wide receiver spots. But I would characterize him, I'd relate him more to a slot receiver. I think he's better there. He's shifty, he's quick, and he's a pretty good route runner. Again, how much of it is coaching? How much of it is actually himself, where he and other receivers just weren't able to get open a season ago. I can't imagine that's all schematics. Mike Yurcich was fired for a reason, but at some point, the wide receivers just have to get open. Drew Allar didn't turn the ball over because he was not going to throw into those windows where his guys weren't getting separation. So it takes a quarterback that is just going to be, confident in himself. That's one thing, got to get the football to him. But you're going to need a coach, an offensive coordinator that's going to have to scheme KeAndre Lambert-Smith open at times. And above all else, KeAndre Lambert-Smith cannot be the number 1 wide receiver, especially if he's going to SEC country. If he does end up at Auburn, if he does happen to end up at Georgia or anywhere else, it would be because they intend for him to be the 2nd or 3rd option. He is not going to be a number 1. If you want to put him at another type of school, maybe you could be a number 1 at Colorado. But again, you're getting that same base of he will be good, but he won't be great. He's not a number 1 in my book. And he proved that when, it came down to crunch time, Michigan and Ohio State, nowhere to be found.
So now that Penn State has that opening on the offensive side of the football for a part of their game that's one of their biggest questions in the offseason, how can the passing game improve under first-year offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki, who, I think Penn State fans are rightly pretty excited to have over there? Is Penn State now on the prowl for a wide receiver in the transfer portal?
They should be. I think they should. There's, again, another split. Some people are saying that, yeah, they should. I'm in that boat. Some people say, no, they don't need another wide receiver. And this is KeAndre Lambert-Smith leaving is addition by subtraction. I absolutely think they need a wide receiver. They need a specific type of wide receiver. They check off multiple boxes here with Julian Fleming in terms of getting a leader, getting someone that's really good at blocking. One of the biggest weaknesses from Penn State's wide receiver core is that really nobody could block a season ago, and that hindered the running game to an extent, at least the explosiveness of it. Julian Fleming was the 2nd best blocker, according to PFF, on Ohio State's roster, period. And that includes the offensive line. He had the best run blocking grade. So Julian Fleming upgrades there, but he's still a possession receiver, Spencer. Penn State needs somebody that can stretch defenses, that can go over the top. A KJ Hamler type, a Jahan Dotson. I'm not saying overall talent, but just a speedster. They just need someone that can clock as, maybe a sub 4.4 and get somebody that we got to keep our safeties back because we do not want this player burning our defense. And Drew Allar has the arm strength to hit that wide receiver. Drew Allar isn't inept of talent, but when it comes to scheme, available options, at time confidence, yeah, that's what you do need. And I think a speed threat opens all of that up, and it opens up the running game and a lot of things. So they just need someone that can go deep, and Drew Allar can chuck that football all the way down to that, and that whoever that wide receiver is. That's what they need. They need a speedster.
Speaking of Penn State quarterback Drew Allar, he was on display in the spring game. It was a dominant win for White, 27 to nothing for the Nittany Lions. And who wins doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. What does matter is how guys look. A new offensive coordinator, as I mentioned. They've got some influx of talent with guys like Julian Fleming at wide receiver. There was a little bit of flack being directed towards Drew Allar in regard to the spring game, but you're defending him. Why?
I'm defending him I have tons of reasons. I have multiple episodes up on Locked On Nittany Lions, so I encourage people to go check those out, podcast, YouTube, wherever you watch and listen. But Spencer, Drew Allar is going into a new offense. This is a spring game. KeAndre Lambert-Smith was not there with his intentions of going into the portal even before he officially entered. Julian Fleming was on the other team since he was a transfer, and James Franklin wanted to see him going up against the ones. So Drew Allar didn't have his full offense. Nicholas Singleton was out. Katron Allen was out. Right. So the offensive line was banged up because the scout defense, the defensive line, had 4 sacks and 6 tackles for loss. So they had pretty good pressure that day. So if you give Penn State in that offense, Drew Allar, all of the number ones like they're supposed to be, there's a lot of context that's missing to a bad day. Also, there was a weather advisory in effect for the entire afternoon. Okay. Canopies were flying. Tailgates did not go. Tailgates were canceled by some people because of how windy it was. People just say, oh, there were some wind gusts. Spencer, there were 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts on
50.
average.
5,
yeah,
not 1.5. This is 5-0 we are talking about here.
5-0, yes. Winds typically 20 to 25 miles an hour with gusts up to 40, 50 miles an hour throughout the day. So no quarterback was going to look good in that environment. And I think for Drew Allar to go, I think it was 15 to 32. He had 1 touchdown and 202 yards, no turnovers. I think Drew Allar's really good at protecting the football. I mean, and so you got to give him credit where credit's due. So you're missing those options on offense. You're on the conditions. You're in and out of the game, right? You have quarterback, you and Bo Prabula are switching out. So Drew Allar can't exactly get hot, and then combine that with a new offense. So there's a lot of context that's missing. Sure. Did Drew Allar, mechanics break down, footwork looked a little shifty at times. Yes, because those are some of his weaknesses, but you also have to put it into perspective of you can correct those things, but the overarching storylines here are being just neglected. Nobody's talking about them the way they should be. It's just, oh, Drew Allar looked bad. That's a story. Penn State's going to be, 8-4, 7-5, because we can compile a bunch of misinterpreted clips here on social media.
Yeah, FanDuel's got Penn State as a favorite to be a college football playoff team in 2024 by just a little bit. Zach Seyko, Locked On Penn State. Zach, thanks as always.
I appreciate it, Spencer. Anytime.
Colorado. Remember Colorado? Remember the Alamo of sorts? Well, they're trying to make some moves in the transfer portal.